The obsidian spire of the Ethelgard Dominion pierced the purple stratosphere of Ethel Prime like a needle of black glass driving into the bruised flesh of the sky, a monument to a civilization that had never known the indignity of defeat. Inside the spire, within the chamber of the Ascendant, the air was cold, recycled through filtration systems that smelled faintly of ozone and crushed iron, a scent designed to keep the mind sharp and the predatory instincts awake. High Tactician Vrako stood by the panoramic viewport, his four-fingered hands clasped behind his back, the chitinous plates of his carapace shifting with the slow, rhythmic expansion of his lungs. Below him, the sprawling megacity of the capital hummed with the energy of a trinary star system, an endless ocean of jagged architecture and military might that had swallowed 1,000 worlds. Yet despite the glory of the Dominion, despite the uncountable fleets waiting in the void, there was a silence in the room that felt heavy, a gravitational anomaly of the soul that pressed down on the shoulders of the High Council. They were waiting for a report from the Outer Rim, a confirmation of a routine subjugation, but the silence from the task force had stretched too long, bleeding from hours into rotations, and now into something that tasted like uncertainty. Uncertainty was a flavor the Ethelgard did not know how to digest. Their history was a straight line of conquest, a geometric perfection of violence where the strong consumed the weak and order was established through the barrel of a plasma caster. Vrakos turned his gaze from the city to the center of the room, where a holographic table shimmered with the static of long-range telemetry, the blue light casting long, harsh shadows across the faces of the other counselors. "The transmission is fragmented," Sub-Overseer Kale murmured, his voice a grinding rasp of irritation, his mandibles twitching as he manipulated the controls of the hololith. Kale was young for a counselor, eager for blood, his carapace still gleaming with the polish of the academy rather than the scars of the front, and he viewed the delay as incompetence rather than danger. The 7th Splinter Fleet was sent to pacify a minor territorial dispute in the Sol sector. The species inhabiting that region, these humans, are barely a Type 1 civilization. They rely on kinetic weaponry and rudimentary shielding. Commander Thrax should have burned their orbital habitats and returned by now. The fact that we are waiting suggests a communications failure, nothing more. Vrakos looked at Kale with eyes that were black pools of ancient cynicism, the eyes of a warrior who had seen empires crumble not from external force, but from the rot of arrogance. Walked slowly toward the table, his heavy boots clanking against the metal floor, a sound that echoed like a war drum in the vast, vaulted chamber. "Thrax is a brute," Vrakos said, his voice deep and resonant, vibrating in the chest cavities of everyone present. "But he is not incompetent. If his communications are down, it is because something stripped the quantum entanglement from his array. And the humans, you dismiss them too easily, Kale. We have analyzed their history. They are fractured, yes. Chaotic, yes, but they are survivors of their own gravity. They do not break, they compress. They are soft-flesh creatures," Kale spat, dismissing the warning with a wave of his hand. "I reviewed the combat logs before the blackout. Thrax engaged a vessel on the periphery of their system, a massive white ship. It carried no weapons, no shielding signatures of military grade. It broadcasted universal codes of truce and biological aid. A hospital ship, they called it. The Sanctuary. Thrax did what any sensible commander would do. He identified it as a deception. Why would a species waste resources on a vessel that cannot fight? And he vaporized it. It was a mercy killing, a demonstration of resolve." The air in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Vrakos froze, his head tilting slowly to the side, a gesture of predatory focus. The other counselors, ancient beings draped in the ceremonial robes of the High Synod, shifted uncomfortably. To fire on a vessel of healing was not technically against the Ethelgard Code of War. The code only respected those who could defend themselves. But it was considered gauche, a waste of ammunition, and strategically unsound if the goal was resource acquisition. But more than that, Vrakos felt a sudden, inexplicable chill in his marrow, a biological warning system evolved over millions of years of apex predation. "He fired on a healer?" Vrakos asked, his voice barely a whisper. "He destroyed a vessel dedicated to the preservation of life, a vessel explicitly marked as non-combatant," Kale shrugged, the motion stiff. "It is irrelevant. The weak exist to be culled. By destroying their medical support, he demoralizes them. It proves that nowhere is safe. It is standard psychological warfare." "It is standard for species who fear death," Vrakos corrected, his tone darkening. "But we have studied the human psychological profiles. They do not view medicine as merely maintenance. They view it as sacred. You have not just broken a supply line, Kale. You have insulted their deity of compassion." The hololith suddenly flared, the static coalescing into a sharp, terrifyingly clear image. It was not a transmission from Commander Thrax. It was not a frantic plea for reinforcements. It was a sensor sweep of the sector where the 7th Splinter Fleet had been deployed. The room fell into a silence so absolute it was as if the air had been vented into the void. The holographic display showed the Sol system, the yellow star burning steady and bright, the orbits of the planets tracing lazy ellipses in the dark. And there, near the 4th planet, a rusted, red world of dust and iron, was the 7th Splinter Fleet. But it was not in formation. It was not engaging the enemy. The ship's great dreadnoughts of durasteel and plasma batteries were drifting. They were not destroyed. There was no debris field, no expanding clouds of superheated gas that marked the death of a starship. They were simply dark, cold, dead in the water. Every light extinguished, every engine cold, every weapon system silent. They hung in the void like toys discarded by a bored child. And surrounding them, dwarfing the Ethelgard capital ships, were not human warships. There were no sleek fighters, no massive battle cruisers bristling with guns. Instead, there were massive, blocky structures, industrial and ugly, tethered to the red planet below by shimmering ribbons of blue light. "Report," Cale screeched, his composure shattering instantly. "What is that? Why are the ships not moving? Are they boarded? Is it a virus?" The technician manning the console, a lower-caste drone whose hands shook uncontrollably, looked up with wide, terrified eyes. "High tactician, the sensors, they detect no damage to the fleet. No hull breaches, no thermal scarring, but the systems are completely inert. It's as if the electrons in their reactors simply stopped flowing. And sir, the energy readings coming from the planet, from the red world, they are off the scale. It is not weapons fire, it is resonance." Vrakos leaned over the table, his claws gripping the edge until the metal groaned. "Resonance, explain." The technician swallowed hard. "The humans, they are broadcasting a geomagnetic frequency, but not from a ship. They are using the planet itself, the core of the red world. They have spun it up. They are using the planet's magnetic field as a directed energy weapon." "They didn't fire a shot, sir. They simply turned the planet on, and the magnetic pulse fused every circuit in our fleet." The implication hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. The Ethelgard built ships to conquer worlds. They bombarded surfaces from orbit. They cracked crusts. But the idea of using a planet, a celestial body, as a tool, as a component in a machine was alien to them. It spoke of a mastery over the physical world that went beyond engineering and into the realm of geological symbiosis. "They weaponized a planet," Vrakos whispered, a dawn of horror rising in his mind. "As we touched their healers, they did not send a fleet to fight us. They simply told the ground to swallow us." Before Cale could respond, the communications officer spoke up, his voice trembling. "High tactician, we are receiving a hail. It is not coming from the Sol system. It is coming from just outside our own orbit." The room erupted in chaos. "Impossible," Cale roared. "The Sol system is thousands of light years away. Even with slip space drives, it would take weeks to traverse that distance." Vrakos raised a hand, silencing the room with a sharp gesture. "Put it on screen." The main view screen flickered, the image of the stars replaced by the interior of a human vessel. It was not a bridge of war. There were no flashing red lights, no soldiers in power armor, no weapons lockers. It looked like a library or a study. Walls lined with physical books, paper and ink, archaic and fragile, and a large wooden desk. Behind the desk sat a human male. He was old, his hair the color of steel wool, his face lined with the cartography of a long life. He wore a simple suit of dark fabric, a white shirt and a tie, no armor, no rank insignia. He looked small, soft, and utterly terrifying. He held a ceramic cup in one hand and was reading a document. He did not look up immediately when the connection was established. He finished the paragraph, closed the folder, and placed it gently on the desk. Then he looked into the camera. His eyes were not angry. They were tired. They were the eyes of a man who had cleaned up too many messes and was weary of the broom. "I am Ambassador Silas Thorne, representing the United Terra Coalition," the human said, his voice calm, measured, lacking any of the guttural aggression the Ethelgard associated with strength. "I am currently parked in a shuttle just beyond your lunar perimeter. I have not brought a fleet. I have not brought weapons. I have come to return your property." Vrakos stepped forward, his pride demanding he take control of the interaction. "Property? You speak of the 7th Fleet. You have disabled them, human. You have committed an act of war against the Ethelgard Dominion." Thorne smiled, a dry, humorless twitch of the lips. "An act of war? No, high tactician. An act of war is firing on a vessel marked with the Red Cross. An act of war is incinerating 3,000 doctors, nurses, and patients who were en route to a plague outbreak in the Sigma sector. What we did to your fleet was an administrative correction. We turned them off. We didn't kill your sailors. We didn't breach your hulls. We simply decided that you weren't responsible enough to handle nuclear fusion in our backyard, so we removed your batteries. What? You dare insult us? Kale shouted, stepping into the pickup field. We are the Ethel Guard. We have conquered 1,000 stars. You are dirt scratchers. You hide behind your planets because you cannot face us in the void. Thorn's gaze shifted to Kale, and for a moment the human looked almost pitying. We do not hide behind our planets, counselor. We work with them. That is the misunderstanding here. You see a planet as a rock to be owned. We see it as a system to be partnered with. When you fired on the sanctuary, you didn't just annoy a government. You violated a compact we hold with life itself. We treat the Earth and every world we settle as a living extension of our will. You attacked a symbol of preservation, so we responded with the ultimate symbol of stability, gravity. Thorn leaned forward, his hands clasping together. I am here to offer you a choice. Your fleet is intact. Your sailors are alive, though likely very cold and bored. We can reactivate their systems remotely. We can allow them to limp home, or we can leave the magnetic shear in place. In 3 days, the radiation shielding on your ships will fail without power. Your crews will die of exposure. The choice is yours. But before you answer, you should know the sanctuary was not just a hospital ship. Vrakos felt the trap closing, but he couldn't see the mechanism. Explain, he commanded. The sanctuary, Thorn said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming grave, was carrying the primary synthesis data for the necrosis phage, the plague that has been consuming the outer colonies of your own empire. We were coming to help you. We had intercepted your distress calls, the ones you encrypted so your enemies wouldn't know you were dying. We knew you were too proud to ask for aid, so we sent it under the guise of neutrality. Your commander Thrax destroyed the only cure for the disease that is currently killing your population in the Rithos sector. The silence in the chamber of the Ascendant was absolute. It was a silence of shattering glass. The necrosis phage was a state secret. It was a biological horror that liquefied the internal organs of the Ethel Guard. It was unstoppable. The Dominion had been quarantining worlds and burning them to hide the outbreak. They had believed the humans were ignorant, primitive upstarts. Instead, the humans had been watching, analyzing, and attempting to save them. You were coming to cure us, Vrakos stammered, his worldview tilting dangerously. Why, we are enemies. We have threatened your borders. Because, Thorn said, picking up his cup and taking a slow sip, when a house is burning, you don't ask the owner if he likes you before you pick up a bucket. That is the human way. We value life, all life, even the life of a posturing, arrogant empire that shoots at ambulances. But now the cure is vaporized. The data is gone. The sanctuary is dust. Kale slumped against the console, the fight draining out of him. Then we are doomed. The phage will consume the core worlds within a solar cycle. Not necessarily, Thorn said, his eyes gleaming with a sudden, sharp intelligence. The data on the ship was a backup. The primary source is the Earth itself. The biological algorithms we use to synthesize the cure are derived from the deep ocean extremophiles of our home world. We can synthesize it again, but this time we aren't sending a ship. We aren't risking another sanctuary. Then what do you propose? Vrakos asked, his voice humble for the first time in centuries. We need to work together, Thorn said. I didn't come here just to scold you. I came to mobilize you. The phage isn't natural. You know that. We know that. It's an artificial construct. Someone engineered it. Someone is trying to weaken this sector of the galaxy. We suspect it is something from beyond the galactic rim, something ancient. The Ethel Guard have the fleets. You have the firepower. But you lack the nuance. You lack the ability to aid a PT to heal, to understand the biological substrate of the universe. We have that. We are the gardeners. You are the guards. If you want to survive the phage and whatever sent it, you will stand down. You will recall your fleets. You will allow our engineers to install geomantic stabilizers on your capital worlds to shield them from the biosignals controlling the phage. And you will escort us to the source. Vrakos looked at the human. He saw a creature that lacked claws, lacked armor, lacked the physical imposing nature of an Ethel Guard warrior. Yet in this small, soft man, he saw a power that terrified him more than 1,000 dreadnoughts. He saw the power of absolute, unwavering moral certainty backed by the ability to turn a planet into a weapon. You ask us to submit, Kale whispered. No, Thorn corrected. I ask you to evolve. You fired on a hospital ship. You showed the galaxy that you are children with torches. It is time to grow up. The Earth is ready to teach you, but the lesson is mandatory. The negotiations that followed were unlike anything in the history of the Dominion. Usually, diplomacy was a prelude to war or a formalization of surrender. This was a seminar. Thorn did not come alone. He brought a team of xenobiologists, geophysicists, and engineers who descended from the shuttle. They didn't march. They walked with a curiosity that unnerved the Ethel Guard guards. They touched the walls of the spire, scanned the atmospheric composition, and took notes. They treated the terrified alien warriors not as threats, but as subjects of study. Vrakos found himself sitting across from Thorn in a smaller briefing room, the hololith now displaying the complex biostructures of the necrosis phage. "It targets the chitin," Thorn explained, pointing to a molecular chain. "It breaks down the rigid structure of your exoskeleton, turning your own armor into a tomb. It's poetic in a cruel way. Designed to kill the armored, while leaving soft-skinned species like us alone. That's why we suspected it was a weapon targeting you specifically." "Who would do this?" Vrakos asked, his voice low. "We have enemies, yes, the Kryxian hives, the Union of Solitude, but none possess this level of bioengineering." "That is what we intend to find out," Thorn replied. "But first we must stabilize your population. We are going to deploy the terraforming arrays, not to change your atmosphere, but to resonate the bedrock of your worlds. The phage communicates via a subspace signal, a carrier wave that tells the bacteria when to activate. Our plague, we can't stop the bacteria, but we can jam the signal. We use the planet's own magnetic field to create a noise barrier. We did it to your fleet to stop them. We will do it to your planets to save them." Vrakos stared at the human. The concept was elegant, nonviolent, and overwhelmingly powerful. "You will use our own worlds as shields." "We work with the Earth," Thorn repeated, the phrase taking on a mantric quality. "Any Earth, any soil, wherever we stand, we are home. And we protect our home." The process began within the week. Human ships, ugly industrial hulks, arrived in Ethelgard space. They were ignored by the terrified populace who expected invasion. Instead, these ships descended to the uninhabited poles of the infected worlds. They drilled deep into the crust, dropping massive rods of tungsten and superconducting crystal. When the machines activated, the ground hummed. It was a sound felt in the teeth, a vibration that resonated with the very soul of the planet. And instantly the hospitals reported a change. The dying stabilized. The liquefaction stopped. The phage, cut off from its master signal, went dormant. The Dominion was saved not by laser fire, but by the song of their own planets, sung by human conductors. But the story did not end with the cure. The partnership that Thorn had demanded was not a suggestion. The humans had saved the Dominion, and in doing so, they had taken the lead. Vrakos found himself on the bridge of his flagship, the Iron Will, but he was not giving the orders. He was standing beside Admiral Halloway, a human woman with eyes like flint. They were heading into the deep dark, the region of space where the phage signal had originated. The Ethelgard fleet, now equipped with human sensor suites and accompanied by human support vessels, moved with a new purpose. They were no longer conquerors. They were the tip of a spear held by a gardener. "We are approaching the coordinates," Halloway said, her hands dancing over a holographic interface. "The signal source is a rogue planet, no star, just a dark world drifting in the void." "A rogue planet?" Vrakos asked. "A base?" "No," Halloway said, zooming in. "It's not a base. The planet is the source. It's artificial." On the screen, the dark shape loomed. It was the size of a gas giant, but solid. Its surface was covered in geometric patterns, vast trenches the size of Kentin. Hence, it was a machine masquerading as a world, and it was waking up. "They fired on a hospital ship," Halloway mused, her voice cold. "They thought we were weak because we heal. They didn't understand that to heal you must understand how things break, and we know exactly how things break." She turned to Vrakos. "High Tactician, order your fleet to form a defensive perimeter. Keep the drones off us. The Earth's Lament is going to engage the target." "The Earth's Lament?" Vrakos asked. "I see no dreadnought by that name." Halloway smiled, a terrifying, feral smile. "It's not a dreadnought, Vrakos. It's the ship that brought us here." She pointed out the viewport. A massive vessel, shaped like a tuning fork, was moving toward the artificial planet. It was dwarfed by the enemy, a speck of dust against a mountain. "That ship carries a gravimetric inverter," Halloway explained. "We aren't going to shoot the machine world. We are going to speak to it. We are going to introduce it to the concept of structural resonance." The battle that followed was silent in the vacuum, but violent on the spectrum of physics. The artificial world unleashed swarms of biomechanical drones, billions of them blotting out the stars. The Ethelgard fleet met them with a wall of plasma, a desperate, grinding holding action. Vrakos fought with the fury of a warrior redeemed, his ships forming a shield around the human vessel. He watched as Ethelgard cruisers rammed drone swarms, sacrificing themselves to buy time. For the first time, they were dying not for conquest, but for survival and for their allies. "Hold the line," Vrakos roared over the comms. "Do not let them touch the human ship. They are the key." And then the key turned. The Earth's Lament fired, not a laser, not a missile. It fired a sound, a pulse of gravity so intense it rippled the fabric of spacetime. It struck the artificial world, and the planet rang like a bell. The geometric plates on its surface began to buckle. The resonance frequency matched the natural vibration of the superdense materials the enemy world was made of. It was the technique of an opera singer shattering a glass, scaled up to the level of celestial mechanics. The enemy world shuddered. Great fissures opened on its surface, venting atmosphere and coolant. The drone swarms faltered as their command signal was scrambled by the chaotic gravity waves. "It is cracking," Vrakos whispered, awestruck. "You are breaking a world." "We are reshaping it," Holloway corrected. "We are returning it to dust." The artificial world groaned, a psychic scream that was picked up by every telepath in the fleet. And then, with a slow, majestic finality, it shattered. It didn't explode in fire, it crumbled. Gravity tore it apart, reducing the ancient machine to a cloud of debris and ice. The signal stopped. The phage died. The threat was ended. In the aftermath, amidst the drifting wreckage of a god machine, Vrakos stood with Thorn and Holloway on the observation deck of the Sanctuary II, a new hospital ship constructed by the joint efforts of human and Ethelgard engineers. The mood was somber, reflective. The war was over, but the universe had gotten larger and colder. "You have changed us," Vrakos said, looking at the human ambassador. "We were wolves. You have made us something else. Watchdogs, perhaps." Thorn chuckled, the sound warm. "Wolves are useful, Vrakos, but even wolves have a pack, and they protect their pups." "The machine world," Vrakos asked, looking out at the debris field. "Who built it? Why did it want to destroy us?" Thorn's expression grew serious. "We analyzed the data cores from the wreckage. It wasn't built by an enemy. It was an automated system, a galactic immune system. It detected the Ethelgard expansion, the endless wars, the destruction of biospheres. It classified your empire as a pathogen. The phage was a cure. It was trying to heal the galaxy of you." Vrakos recoiled, the horror of the revelation striking him. We were the disease." "You were behaving like one," Thorn said gently. "But that is why we intervened. We showed the system that you could change, that you could be part of the symbiosis. When we worked together, when you protected us while we sang to the planet, the system hesitated. It saw cooperation. It saw a complex organism instead of a virus. We didn't just destroy it, we proved it wrong." Thorn placed a hand on the alien's armored shoulder. "That is the human philosophy, High Tactician. No one is irredeemable. No one is just a disease. As long as you are willing to stand on the earth and look up, you are worth saving. But never, ever fire on the hospital ship again." Vrakos looked at the human, then out at the stars, which seemed a little less hostile, a little more filled with possibility. He bowed, a gesture of deep, unironic respect. "We will not, Ambassador. The Ethelgard do not forget their lessons. We will work with the Earth, and together we will ensure the galaxy remains healthy." The alliance that formed that day shifted the balance of power in the Milky Way. The Ethelgard provided the steel, the fleets, the martial discipline. Humanity provided the soul, the science, and the terrifying ability to weaponize the very ground beneath their feet. They became the guardians of the Rim, a dual-species coalition dedicated to the preservation of life. And in the academies of Ethel Prime, young warriors were taught a new maxim, carved into the obsidian walls of the high spire. "Fear the one who holds the sword, but fear more the one who heals the wound, for he knows exactly where to cut to end you." The hospital ship sanctuary was remembered not as a tragedy, but as the catalyst for a new age. An age where the earth and the sky marched together, and the silence of the void was filled with the hum of planets singing in harmony, protected by the wolves who had learned to love the shepherd. The final mystery, however, remained. As the fleets dispersed and the rebuilding began, Thorn remained in his study on the Sanctuary II. He opened a secure channel to Earth Command. The face of the High Director appeared. "Did they suspect?" the Director asked. Thorn shook his head. "No, they believed the machine world was an automated immune system. They believed they were the disease." "Good," the Director said. "If they knew that the machine world was actually a terraforming probe sent by us 3,000 years ago during the dark age of technology, if they knew we built the thing that almost killed them, the Alliance would crumble." Thorn looked at the debris field one last time. "We cleaned up our mess, Director, and we gained a powerful ally in the process. The Ethelgard are better for it. We are better for it. Sometimes you have to break a bone to set it right." "Agreed," the Director said. "Project Gaian Resonance is a success. Proceed to Phase 2, the uplifting of the Kryxian hives. And Thorn?" "Yes, Director. Make sure they don't shoot at the ambulances either." Thorn smiled, the cold, calculating smile of a human who knows that the most dangerous weapon in the universe is a helping hand. "I think the message has been received, sir, loud and clear." The screen faded to black, leaving Thorn alone with the stars, the silent guardians of a galaxy that had just learned the true cost of firing on the Red Cross. The integration of Ethelgard society with human philosophy was not a smooth transition. It was a collision of tectonic plates that resulted in a new, jagged but stable landscape. The Ethelgard warriors, accustomed to resolving disputes through ritual combat, found themselves baffled by human lawyers, mediators, and therapists. Yet they could not deny the efficacy of the human methods. Efficiency in the Dominion rose by 300% within the first year of the alliance. The logic was undeniable. A soldier who is not mentally traumatized fights better. A worker who is not oppressed produces more. The humans introduced the concept of soft power, a weapon the Ethelgard had never considered. Why invade a planet and spend resources occupying it when you can sell them blue jeans, pop music, and terraforming tech, making them dependent on your economy? It was a conquest of culture, insidious and absolute, and the Ethelgard High Council watched in stunned awe as humanity subjugated systems without firing a single shot. But the true test of the alliance came not from trade, but from the deep void. The destruction of the machine world had sent ripples through the dark matter web of the galaxy. It was a signal flare, a scream that something had changed in the local cluster, and things in the dark were listening. 3 years after the Treaty of the Spire, the sensors of the Ethelgard long-range picket went blind. Not jammed, blind. The stars simply vanished from the screens. A region of space 50 light-years across had been engulfed in a shadow that swallowed light, gravity, and hope. It was moving toward the joint territories. Vrakos, now the supreme commander of the Allied Defense Forces, stood on the bridge of the Gaia's Wrath, a dreadnought that was a monstrous hybrid of Ethelgard aesthetics and human engineering. It had the obsidian hull of the Dominion, but the engines were pure Terran resonance drives, capable of slipstreaming through the fabric of reality. "The shadow approaches," Vrakos rumbled, his voice amplified by the bridge speakers. "Analysis." Admiral Holloway stood beside him, her face bathed in the red glow of the tactical displays. "It's not a fleet, Vrakos, it's a biological mass, a hive swarm, but not like the Kryxians. This is primal. It consumes stellar matter. It's eating the stars." The image on the screen was apocalyptic. A cloud of biomass, billions of kilometers wide, was wrapping itself around a star system. The star dimmed, then flickered out as the swarm harvested its fusion layer. "They are the locusts, Hallow." I whispered, "The great filter, they come to harvest civilizations that get too loud." Vrakos looked at her. "Then we must be quiet." "No," Holloway said, her eyes hard. "We are humans, we are Ethelgard, we do not go quietly, we get louder, we make them regret having ears." The plan was insane. It was the kind of plan that only a human could dream up and only an Ethelgard would be crazy enough to execute. They could not fight the swarm ship to ship, there were too many of them. The biomass was infinite. To fight it with lasers was to try to hold back the tide with a spoon. "We need a barrier," Thorn had said during the emergency council. "A fire break." "In space?" Kale had asked, incredulous. "Yes," Thorn replied. "We are going to detonate a star." The room had gone silent. "We aren't just going to blow it up," Thorn continued, as if discussing a renovation. "We are going to induce a hyperaccelerated supernova in an uninhabited system directly in the swarm's path. We will use the geomantic resonance engines to destabilize the core of the star Redulus. When it blows, it will create a shockwave of gamma radiation and plasma that will incinerate the biomass for 10 light-years. It will burn the field so the fire cannot spread." "You want to kill a star," Vrakos had said, "to save the forest." "Exactly," Thorn said. "Working with the Earth isn't just about soil, it's about celestial mechanics. A star is just a big rock that's on fire. We can work with that." The preparation for the operation, codenamed Lightbringer, took every resource the Alliance had. Thousands of ships towed the massive resonance arrays into position around the dying red giant Redulus. The heat was intense. The radiation shielding was pushed to the limit. Ethelgard pilots flew suicide runs to keep the advanced tendrils of the swarm away from the engineering ships. They died in silence, their honor satisfied by the knowledge that they were protecting the greatest weapon ever forged. Vrakos watched the telemetry from the bridge of the Gaia's Wrath. He saw human tugs and Ethelgard cruisers moving in a ballet of desperate precision. He saw the swarm, a wall of writhing darkness, closing in. "Initiate the sequence," Vrakos ordered. On the surface of the sun, the resonance arrays activated. They pumped a gravitational frequency into the heart of the star, a song designed to disrupt the hydrostatic equilibrium that kept the star from collapsing. The star fought back. Solar flares lashed out, vaporizing equipment, but the song continued, a relentless mathematical chant of destruction. The star began to pulse. It contracted, then expanded. The core temperature spiked to billions of degrees. "Get clear," Holloway shouted. "Jump, all ships, jump!" The Allied fleet engaged their slip drives, tearing a hole in reality to escape the coming apocalypse. Vrakos watched the rear monitors as the Gaia's wrath slipped into the gray void of subspace. The last thing he saw was Redulu's collapsing in on itself, a tragic, beautiful implosion. And then the light. When they re-emerged in real space, safe behind the shield of distance, the sensors were blinded for hours. The supernova of Redulu's was the brightest event in the sector's history. It was a hammer of God striking the anvil of the void. When the sensors finally cleared, the swarm was gone, vaporized. The shockwave had scrubbed the sector clean. Where there had been a cloud of billion-year-old hunger, there was now only expanding gas and the birth of new nebulae. "Target neutralized," Holloway reported, her voice shaking with exhaustion. "The firebreak held." Vrakos sat back in his command chair, the tension leaving his body in a long, shuddering sigh. He looked at his hands, claws designed to rend flesh, and then at the human admiral beside him. "We killed a star," he murmured, "to save the darkness." "We worked with the sky," Holloway corrected gently. "And the sky answered." The victory cemented the Alliance as the dominant power in the quadrant. No one dared challenge the union of Earth and Ethelgard, who would fight a civilization that used supernovae as landmines. But the story of the sanctuary and the response of humanity became a legend, a myth whispered in the back rooms of space stations and the throne rooms of distant emperors. They told the story of the arrogant empire that fired on a ship of healing and how the humans didn't get angry. They didn't scream. They simply reached out, took hold of the planets, took hold of the stars, and rearranged the universe until the problem was solved. Years later, on his deathbed, Vrakos asked for Thorn. The human, now ancient and frail, sat by the old warrior's side. "Thorn," Vrakos rasped, his carapace gray and brittle. "I have one question. The machine world, the one we destroyed. You said it was an immune system, but the code we found in the wreckage later, it was based on binary. It was human code, wasn't it?" Thorn sat in silence for a long moment, the hum of the life support machinery filling the room. He took Vrakos' hand. "We are a complicated species, Vrakos. We build monsters to fight our demons, and sometimes we forget where we put them. The machine world was a relic of a time when we were lost. We needed you to help us destroy it just as much as you needed us to save you from it. We are all seeking redemption, old friend. You found yours in the Alliance. I found mine in fixing the mistakes of my ancestors." Vrakos let out a wheezing laugh. "So we were both monsters." "Yes," Thorn said softly, "but we decided to be monsters who protect the weak. That is the difference." Vrakos nodded, his eyes closing. "It is a good difference. Working with the Earth is hard work." "Rest now, High Tactician," Thorn said. "The shift is over. We have the watch." Vrakos died with a smile on his face, the first Ethelgard High Lord to die in a bed, surrounded by friends, rather than on a battlefield surrounded by corpses. The funeral was broadcast across 1,000 worlds. Human Marines and Ethelgard honor guards stood side by side, their distinct salutes merging into a single gesture of respect. They fired a volley into the air, not of bullets, but of flares that seeded the clouds above the capital with rain. It was a final tribute, a warrior who brought life, honored by a sky that wept for him. And high above, in the orbit of Ethel Prime, the sanctuary III watched over them all, its white hull gleaming, the red cross a beacon in the night. It carried no weapons. It needed none. For behind it stood the Earth and the dominion and the terrible, beautiful power of a species that would move heaven and earth to ensure that no one ever again would dare to fire on the healers. The galaxy had learned its lesson. The humans were kind. The humans were gentle. The humans were patient. But the humans were the children of a death world, and if you broke their rules, they wouldn't just kill you. They would turn the universe itself against you until there was nowhere left to hide. And that was the truest victory of all. As the rain fell on Vrakos' tomb, a young Ethelgard child looked up at a human soldier standing guard. "Why do we cry?" the child asked. The soldier, a giant in power armor, looked down, his visor retracting to reveal a scarred human face. "We don't cry, little one," the soldier said. "We are just watering the Earth so the next generation can grow stronger." The child nodded, understanding. The Earth was not just dirt, it was a promise that if you fell, you would be caught. And if you attacked the catcher, the ground would rise up to meet you. The legacy of the sanctuary was secure. The humans had responded well, and the galaxy was finally, truly quiet. Deep in the void, beyond the reach of the Alliance, a signal drifted. It was faint, ancient, and cold. It originated from a galaxy far, far away, detecting the supernova of Redulu's. It was a listening post of a Type III civilization, the architects of the void. The signal analyzed the energy signature of the induced supernova. It deconstructed the resonance frequencies used by the humans. It processed the data for a microsecond, which for the architects was an eternity of thought. Then it sent a single message back to its home cluster. A message of caution. Warning, Galactic Sector 9 has developed planetary resonance capability. The species designation humanity has weaponized stellar mechanics. Do not engage. Do not harvest. Repeat, do not engage. They have bonded with the substrate. They are the planet shapers. Avoid at all costs. The architects turned their great hungry eyes away from the Milky Way, seeking easier prey in the dark. Humanity had not just won a war, they had put up a sign on the lawn of their galaxy. Beware of dog, and the dog was the Earth itself. Thorne, watching the rain from the balcony of the spire, felt a shiver in his bones. He didn't know about the architects, he didn't know about the signal, but he looked up at the wet sky and felt a strange sense of peace. "We did it, Vrokos," he whispered to the wind. "We made it safe." He took a sip of his tea, the ceramic cup warm in his hands. It was Earl Grey hot, a small comfort in a big universe. He turned and walked back inside, the heavy doors closing with a thud that echoed like a vault ceiling shut. The story was done. The lesson was taught. The hospital ship sailed on, and the Earth, spinning in the dark, hummed a low, satisfied note of protection, waiting for the next fool to test its resolve. The end was not an end, but a beginning of a silence that was not empty, but full of watching eyes and waiting hands, ready to catch or ready to crush. The archival record of these events, stored in the Great Library of Terra, ends with a simple footnote attached to the file of the sanctuary incident. It reads, "Diplomacy is the art of saying, 'Nice doggy,' until you can find a rock. Humanity has realized that if you are smart enough, the rock can be the planet you are standing on. Use this knowledge wisely." And below it, a single image, a white ship with a red cross, floating peacefully above a world that is slowly, rhythmically breathing. The systems of the Ethelgard and the humans grew intertwined, their roots mingling in the dark soil of the cosmos. Cities were built that spanned the gap between their aesthetic philosophies, sharp black spires wrapped in living green vines, cold iron softened by flowing water. The two species, once so different, found a rhythm. The Ethelgard taught the humans discipline, the stillness of the predator before the strike. The humans taught the Ethelgard adaptation, the chaotic growth of the weed that cracks the pavement. Together they were unstoppable, but they never sought to conquer again. They became the gardeners of the Milky Way. When a world was dying, they fixed the core. When a star was unstable, they sang it back to health. When a civilization was plagued, they sent the sanctuary ships. And if a warlord rose up thinking he could take what he wanted by force, thinking he could prey on the weak, they didn't send a fleet. They sent a diplomat, a small, soft creature with a briefcase and a warning. "You have fired on the innocent," the diplomat would say. "You have 3 days to surrender, or the ground will eat your tanks, the sky will crush your jets, and your own sun will refuse to shine on you." Most surrendered. Those who didn't became object lessons, their worlds turned into monuments of silence, graveyards where the only sound was the wind howling through the ruins of arrogance. The universe was a dangerous place, filled with horrors and void gods and entropy. But in one corner of the spiral arm there was light. There was safety. There was a hospital ship, and guarding it was the Earth, the old, scarred, beautiful brawler who had finally found a partner worthy of her strength. The story of the sanctuary was the story of the day the galaxy learned that the hand that heals is attached to the arm that moves worlds. And that arm is made of iron and dirt and love. The final entry in the personal journal of high tactician Vrokos, discovered decades later, contained only 3 words written in the clumsy, blocky script of the human language he had tried so hard to learn. They were not words of war or strategy or glory. They were a testament to the strange, terrifying friendship that had saved his people. Scrawled on the last page in fading ink were the words, "Earth stands with us." And for the Ethelgard, that was enough. It was everything. The nightmare was over. The dream had begun. And the hospital ship sailed on, untouchable, eternal, the sacred heart of a galaxy that had learned at long last to be kind.